Hi, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. It's Tuesday, May 12th. We're going to do Unit 10 review today. Tomorrow, we're going to finish up with Unit 11 review. And then I don't think I see you Wednesday. Right. And then Thursday and Friday are going to just be like quick tips, reviews. And then Monday is going to be the Kahoot, the online Kahoot where all the psychology teachers have put in different Kahoots for you guys to kind of jump in anytime. It's going to be like live all day long. So as soon as I get more details about that, I'll post it on Schoology. And then Tuesday the 19th is our test. So we're about a week away. I hope you guys are doing some good studying, hopefully 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, looking over some of those practice FRQs that is posted in the AP exam review folder. Anything that you need, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, so no homework from me this week, just because I know that other exams are happening. So I don't want you to feel like you have to do anything for my class just besides, watching these review videos and studying a little bit. Okay, so good luck on all your exams this week. And I hope the teachers do the same for our class too. Okay, so we're going to quickly review Unit 10. I don't think it's going to take too long. Tomorrow I'm going to review Unit 11. We won't have class Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. We'll just do some check-ins and like FRQ stuff, okay? So Unit 10 is the personality unit. It's a small unit, but it really packs a lot of information in it. So let me get on that slide. Okay, so the thing to remember with the personality unit is you have to know what theories, how they describe your personality and your behavior. So there's four big ones that they talk about in this unit. So psychoanalytic, they talk about the trait theory, they talk about humanistic, and then they talk about like the social cognitive, those three theories in here on how they explain personality and development. Okay, and then know the difference between the projective test and the objective test. So we'll go into that too. So those are like the big key components from this unit. Psychoanalytic is a huge one. Obviously, it's Freud. Things are all in the unconscious. Remember, like the tip of the iceberg. So we just see the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much underneath. So really, that's kind of Freud's that's how he describes your personality, that everything is, everything, the way you are is largely because of the unconscious, right? And he talked about the id, the ego, and the superego. So please know the difference between those as well. And then he did the psychosexual stages of development. We'll go over those. And then he also talked about the defense mechanisms in there as well. Okay, so the three parts of the personality he called the id, the ego, and the superego. And remember, you're kind of like the ego, right? And then like you have this little devil that sits on this shoulder, and he refers to that as the id. So that's more of like the pleasure principle, like I want things and I want it now. And then you have this little angel on this other shoulder who he's kind of like your moral compass, like, he's, do the right thing. And the ego's kind of like, no, we want to do this right now. We want this chocolate cake right this second. Where, the angel is kind of like, no, you can wait until after dinner. And so the ego is kind of this mediator between the two of them. That's how Freud describes the psychoanalytic theory. Okay. So just make sure you know the differences in there. And then the ego kind of came up with these defense mechanisms to kind of mediate between the id and the superego. Okay, and then the psychosexual stages are really important. Just kind of knowing, the age group and like what's going on in there. And then he always says that if you're fixated on one of these, like if you didn't go through the conflict properly and then you get fixated, like that's the reason why you smoke, or that's the reason why you have an addiction. Like he explains it, through the psychosexual stages. Okay, so the oral stages, that's 0 to about 18 months typically, and that's pleasure focuses, and it's kind of, it's all surrounded by the mouth. Okay, the second stage is the anal stage, and that's around really like 18 months to like 36 months. The conflict is like toilet training. It's a little bit more about control. Like I can control my bladder. I can control, a bowel movement, those kinds of things. So that's all in that toilet training stage. And that's kind of where the ego forms. So where the oral stage is really id, the anal stage is more like the ego starting to form in there. Then the phallic stage that's usually around like 4 to 5, 3 to 6, something like that. That's where little kids start to know that they have, genitals. That's where the Electra complex and the Oedipal complex is, where those kids identify with their same-sex parent, and then they develop a crush on their dad or something like that. That happens in that phase. Then the latency phase is around 6 to 12, and there's like kind of no focus on like sexuality in that. You're expanding your social contacts in that. Like that's kind of where he says that your personality kind of gets set, is that in that latency stage. And then the last stage is the genital stage, and that's from puberty onward. And that's where sexual intimacy sometimes happens. Well, it does happen in that phase. Yeah, and there's feelings, sexual wants, all of that in the person there. Okay. All right. And then defense mechanisms, these were really big with the psychoanalytic theory. So please make sure you know these defense mechanisms. Repression is where the unconscious kind of, you repress the memory. So you just put it aside and don't think about it. Denial is you're just blocking from awareness as well. You just deny it ever happened. Projection is you're taking, your feelings and you're projecting them on someone else. Displacement is that aggression towards someone else. So like if you're mad at your teacher, you come home and you kick your dog even though your dog didn't do anything. You're mad at them, so you displace your feelings. Regression is like that when you're going back to like sucking your thumb, or it's taking you back to like a pre-child, like a childhood behavior. Sublimation, that's where you're kind of you're substituting in a socially acceptable way. And then reaction formation. Okay, so just make sure you go over the differences between all of those, because sometimes they can be a little confusing. Okay, and then the trait theory, that basically says that your personality characteristics, you have these traits, and that they're strong or they're weak tendencies, and they're stable, they're genetic, and that they occur, they just don't change. That's how the trait theorists describe your personality. So doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just how they describe your personality. And they have that big five. So remember our mnemonic, the canoe or the ocean. So the big five is that conscientiousness, the agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. So they feel like those traits are what kind of how they define our personality. Okay, it's also the people that don't agree with this theory, they feel like, traits do change, right? And your personality does change over time. So if someone doesn't agree with this theory, they might, think environment plays a factor. So like changes in the environment. A social cognition theorist would kind of think that your environment is kind of coming into play with your personality, where trait theory people, they are like, these are your traits, this is your personality. And this trait theory, we did that Big Five test. That was part of this theory. Here's the trait theories explained a little bit better. So the Big Five, you can look at it with canoe, or you can look at it with the ocean mnemonic. So again, openness, you're going to be, if you have a low score, you're kind of uncreative. If you have a high score, you're more curious, you're independent, you're creative, you're imaginative. Conscientiousness, if you have a high score, you're more organized, you're careful, you're disciplined, you're punctual. Extroversion, you're more sociable, active, fun-loving, affectionate when you have high scores on that. Agreeableness, you're more trusting, helpful, lenient. And then neuroticism, if you have a high score on that, you're a little bit more emotional, maybe a little bit more anxious, insecure. So you get a score, and just how we got the score from that. You get a score like 90 on openness, and these high scores would describe that for you versus when you get a low score. Okay, sometimes you're right in the middle too. Okay, the humanistic theory, we've talked about Maslow a lot. So again, just kind of, making sure you understand the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He's a big humanistic theory. You're always going to see him when anybody talks about the humanistic theory. Carl Rogers is in this, and he was really, self-concept was important with him. So the idea of who we are, he emphasized personal growth, free will, self-efficacy. So keep in mind those are all humanistic theories of personality when they describe it. And then the behaviorism and the social cognitive theory, that is where this behavior or your personalities is like interaction of your inter-process, like your inner process, and then environmental influences. And Bandura did the reciprocal determinism. So you have these personal cognitive factors, and then you have your behavior, but then the environment also influences that. So just making sure you remember what reciprocal determinism is. Okay, so personality testing, just making sure you know the difference between like the projective personality test. So projective is subjective. Remember, you have to have a psychologist that's like interpreting the results of that. So the Rorschach is a good one for this. It's like they give you this picture of like this painting thing, and you're supposed to figure out, what they're asking you from that. So, but somebody on the other side is subjectively interpreting your answers. Okay, the same thing with that thematic apperception test. They're going to show you a picture, and they're going to say, like, what's happening in this picture? What's the lady doing? And you're answering this based on like just your thoughts. So you have this psychologist who's interpreting those. So it's subjective. So I could be interpreting your results different than another psychologist would be. So again, it's a little bit more subjective than the objective ones. And that's going to be the MMPI or that Big Five personality test that we took. And those are typically multiple choice questions, pretty quick, easy to score. And if you have, like we saw with the Big Five, if you have this high score, this is kind of typically what you would look like. Okay, so just a review of this, the MMPI, sometimes they use this in like human resources where when you get a job, you have to take the MMPI test. So it just gives you, scale numbers, and you've scored based on that. The thematic apperception test, this is, just you're going to get images of people and things, and then you have to describe what you see. Same thing with Rorschach. You'll get a series of pictures, and you have to say, here's what I'm seeing in this. And again, a psychologist is going to read those results. And the last one I have here is just a little fun one. What do you see? And the little girl says, an old guy giving a kid a Rorschach test. So that is pretty much it with all of the personality unit. Quick, to the point. If you have any questions, let me know. No homework for tonight. I'm just sad that this is like our last week together. I miss you guys so, so much. But I'm super excited that the test is on Tuesday. So don't let those little gremlins in your head tell you that like you're not ready for this, because you really are ready for this. You're going to do so great on the test. Okay? I'll see you tomorrow to do, or I'll see you Thursday to do the Unit 11 intelligence review. Okay, take care.